Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio. Dai-Shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts. And as you can see, I'm not in my home office. I had a out-of-town student, way out of town, from upstate New York, coming in from class and got sidetracked through a whole bunch of things. So anyway, here we are. And this is coming to you from the dojo office. For those of you in the Inner Circle program, probably are covered. So anyway, let me just bring some things up here. Of course, I'm all decked out in green because today's St. Patty's Day, and I forgot I was going to be here and have a group. Anyway, let's see. There we go. Okay, so what are we working on? Still mind stuff, right? So anyway, some mental training, but it's not going to be just like we've covered a different mind in the past. So what I'm going to our Ninja no Hachimon program, and so I've been kind of updating things and adding some things in, and so I thought this would be a good time to focus on some. So let's just jump in, and then we'll see who's on and whatnot. All right. So most martial artists train to fight, right? We get that. I mean, most people equate martial arts with fighting, right? But here's something that I was taught way early on, and that is that ninja train to win even starts. Okay. So during this episode, I will be going into what I'm going to call the secret strategy that made the ninja masters of survival. Does that include fighting? Sometimes, right? But more to the point, right? How you can apply it in your own training, your own life, that kind of thing. Okay, and so when we're looking at ninjutsu, not just Budo Taijutsu, not just Ninpo Taijutsu, right, which is the art seems to have been boiled aspect, right, of the entire thing and then blown up. I'll talk about a little bit about that problem as we go as well. But when we're looking at authentic ninjutsu, right, I'm not talking about something that some ninja master that reflects or looks like ninjutsu in the modern world is because they're dressed in black and they stealthily move into areas and whatnot, right? I'm not talking about the guy that's okay. But the within authentic ninjutsu, right, is what we're really looking at is a strategic art focused on and winning, right, without confrontation. Okay, the combat stuff is supposed to be there just in case. So what this really comes down to, and I was told this by a teacher a long time ago, is that if you're relying only on physical skills, then you're missing the most powerful part of the art, right? So we'll talk about this more as we get rolling through this. So I'll see you when we get back.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio.
All right, we're back. James just sent me a little message here that we're having a problem with the feed, keeps intermittently freezing both audio and video. Oh, well, that's not good. James, are we still having that issue? Can we bring you up? Can you pop up there? I don't know if James is on it. Oh, there you are. Can we get that was a bottle. Can we get a check from other folks so we can identify this? Is this, because I didn't get anything pop up. Go ahead.
Carl and Jared are both on, and they said they've both noticed it as well.
All right, so it's not on your side. It's definitely on my side, but I didn't get that little warning on my screen. So is it still happening? Is it still?
Yeah, it's really weird. It's just kind of intermittent. It freezes, but then you pick up like mid-sentence, like it just stops. Screen freezes, but the audio stops as well.
That's really weird because we have.
It just did it there.
Well, I just put it on I just hit an energy saver button. Sorry about that. We're on our high speed, so I'm confused. Let's see. Well, we're going to try to get through this one then. As I was signing on here a few minutes ago, students come in from New York. Drove what do you say it was, James? 3.5, 4 hours, something like that.
Right.
To come to class, which is really funny. Right? Some people that won't travel that or an hour extra to come to a seminar. So he came down for an hour-long class. We did a little admin catch beforehand, but did class. I think I extended it by 30 minutes just to make sure he didn't have didn't do all that driving for nothing. But either way, right, so he's going to have a 7 to 8 hour round trip to come to class, so he could do an hour and a half. Cool. Right? Closest I've ever been to my teacher. I know I'm going to sound like an old man. Closest I've ever been to my teacher is an 8 hour drive. One way, not uphill both ways. Not that I haven't done that, but we do what we need to do, or we do what we are willing to do. Okay, those are not the same thing. Okay, so anyway, one of the old staff assistant shirts. I pulled this thing out because of the day, right? Got the old man bald leprechaun here on the. Hey, James, is it still wavering? Is it still doing weird glitchy things?
Yes. It just freezes,
Weird.
and then it sounds like the audio and everything. The audio picks right back up, and then the video is off sync for a second, and then it is fine.
Like I said, that's really odd because I'm on our high speed. I can sign out and try to sign back in again, but I don't think that's going to do well for the congruency of things. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you can't fix it from where you are, and I can't fix it. If I know, now I just saw something I come across. If there's a significant drop off and somebody has a question, I'm going to close a bunch of windows here from it I was working on earlier. Maybe that'll ease some things up. That just you can just ask, and I'll try to do my best at repeating something I said. Most of the stuff I have laid out in notes because I don't want to miss anything. So is that clearing anything up? Is that helping at all?
Just as you said that, it froze up again.
Did it? I don't understand. I don't understand. Maybe it's time to switch over to the new computer. I mean, I can't do it at the moment, but maybe. Yeah, I can't fix it from where I am. So I apologize. We're going to have to try to get through this. I won't have to cancel anything. So it's good to see the Carl's on. Thanks, Carl. So I don't know. Right. Anybody else jump in? I'm seeing the numbers go up, but I apologize. It seems like we're having a little bit of a internet-wise, and I don't know why. I do know that we've got a little bit of a cold snap that came through, but I'm not doing things out of the home office. But the internet is I think it's the same. I think we have the same bit rate and everything, both my home office and here. So anyway, back to you, James. Sorry.
Like I said, Carl checked in, Jared, Maui.
Cool. Hi, guys. All right. We'll check in again as we go. So again, the focus for this one is we're going to do a little bit more with mental training, but not to the extent that we have. Where I really want to focus during this episode is in perspective, right? And so I mentioned earlier that this week I was hoping to get it done to roll things out with this episode, but it just didn't happen. I've got a couple of extra working parts I have to get finished. So tomorrow I'll roll the things back out again. Some of you guys already have the base programs for some of these things, but we're re-rolling out the very first online. I don't know, Carl, when did you get started? So I can't remember if it was 07,
09.
When was it? 09? Fair enough. So Ninja no Hachimon. And so it was centered around these 8 core areas of training that were required of ninja schools back in ancient Japan, that if you weren't teaching these 8 areas as a minimum, then you couldn't claim to be doing ninjas. You couldn't claim to be teaching ninjutsu. Okay, so that kind of became the core of things. Now, are all lineages following that? Now we'll talk about that a little bit. But they were the core, and then some they're doing. I think most are doing these things as a minimum, at least the way I got it from Hatsumi Sensei. But if you look at the Togakure, right? I said 8, right? Togakure has 18, right? The Juhake. But do they have 18? We'll talk about that as well. I'm only going to be looking at like 3 because I don't have all that time. But we're re-releasing the program. But the first thing that I'm giving to everybody who wants it is this worksheet that I created. That's a way to understand the principles and concepts, right? The reason behind the skill, and how to take the traditional set of 8 and convert that to training that would and should be done in today's world, right? Because one of the big things we have to recognize is that that original set, and I get it. A lot of people, they're purist, right? They only want to do things the traditional way. Traditional way. What era are we talking about? Because some of the traditions that we have only go as far back as Takamasa Sensei. But they only want to do the traditional thing. They only want to do the classical way. Okay, but some of these things are not going to work so well today. And I don't mean because of like weapons and those kind of things, right? I'm talking about things like stealth, right? I have always asserted that we have to have better stealth skills in today's world that our ninja forefathers did in 13th, 14th, 16th century Japan, right? Because the only thing they had to worry about were the eyes and ears of humans and the eyes, nose, and ears of dogs to be detected, right? We have to worry about technology, motion detectors, heat sensors, all kinds of things, right? Now, this isn't even about breaking and entering, okay? My house is a veritable fortress, okay? I have video cameras around my house, outside, not inside, outside. So, got all these things, right? They're also connected to alarms, okay? So unless I disable things, just going through doors or windows could trigger something, okay? Even if it's just this voice at a base station that says, right, kitchen door, front door, living room front window number 2, whatever, right? So things don't convert well, right? They don't convert well if someone's only looking at the item or they're only looking at the exact thing. Okay? For instance, spring camp is coming up here, right, at the beginning of May, and we're focusing on Kotoryu secrets. We're really going to be going deep into that stuff. And I also put Yari, right, Sojutsu, right, spear, on the curriculum for that, right? And I know some people are going to come because that the spear has a certain cool factor to it, right? Other ones because they're jazzed about traditional weapons, which is cool, right? But again, I still lean heavily into converting this stuff for modern self-defense. And I've had people ask the question, right? Since I don't get it, right? Spear, modern self-defense, like the guys with the guns are going to show up if you're walking around town with a freaking spear, right? Why? Okay. Well, one, there's a cool factor, and there's this martial arts thing, right? Traditional weapons with a spear. It's an interesting little thing. But for modern self-defense, there's a disconnect for a lot of people. And given that the possibility that you could be in a construction area, you could be doing some renovation work in your backyard, you could be someplace where you got to press something into use, right? And so you find whatever it is, okay? That could be something long, right? Could be, right? Kind of slim, right? If we think of a spear as, it's just a longer long staff, right? Maybe, okay? But that wasn't the reason for putting it on there. The reason for putting on there is sticking with the Koppo Jutsu theme, the secrets idea, right? The hidden aspect of training, right? Because like the Koppo Jutsu, right, which is not all about bone breaking, right? It's about breaking structure, but it's also the Koppo Jutsu has been Hatsumi Sensei has called that the backbone of the martial arts, right? It's what keeps everything else stable. So there's certain aspects to training that do that. But again, that just keeps boiling down more and more to principles and concepts more than set techniques. Okay. But again, spear, well, the principles and concepts for using a spear correctly require that we're able to maneuver and manipulate this weapon that is somewhere between 7 and 13 feet long. There were some that were upwards of 19 feet long, which is just mind-boggling to me, considering that the average height of a Japanese warrior during the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period, when this stuff was developed for us, using the imperial system was 4 feet 2 inches. Okay, convert that to metric, and you're what, a little over a meter, right? Not even a meter and a half. Okay, so holy shit, right? But to get one of those things into position, to surprise, to have the advantage over your opponent, that takes knowing and doing things differently than just turning a stick. Because the longer the stick, the longer it takes or should take to get a working end from point A to your attacker's target. Body target, weapon, whatever. Okay? So the point with that is, if I understand those principles and concepts, where I'm able to do this with a long weapon, I can then integrate those things into my shorter weapons, and better yet, into my taijutsu, significantly changing the game. Okay, so while we're doing spear, it's not all about the spear. It's about what the spear can teach us. Okay, and therein lies the crux, right? So that kind of leads me into the title for this episode, which is the ninja's secret weapon, right? And the crux here is the winning before the fight even starts. Well, what does that mean, right? Well, again, for most people, right, for most martial artists, right, they train for a literal fight, right, a physical fight, right? But what if that's not the solution to the problem, right? Most martial artists focus on technique first training. I'm not saying that's wrong, right? We focus on techniques first training because it takes longer to develop techniques because of coordination, fitness, agility, all those kind of things, than it does to change certain attitudinal qualities if I'm working on personal development, or to understand certain types of strategy or tactics, or to change how I might verbally describe something or set up the introduction to something I'm trying to present, or those kind of things, right? The physical things just take longer, right? So we get people started that way. The other reason we start things that way is that because most people see this as a martial art, right? Regardless of whether it's much more than that or not, that's what they expect when they come in the door. Okay, so there is something to be said for giving students what they want, so that you can keep them around long enough for them to get what they need. And I know how manipulative that sounds, but it's one of the 8 gates. Okay, so, but this training for a fight, or focus on technique first training, and the way people tend to think about fight, right? It assumes a fair fight. It assumes predictable conditions or structured rules. It presumes, when I say a fair fight, I don't mean that one or the other is not going to cheat or whatever. I mean, all things considered, right? We're the same size, same skill level, that kind of thing, right? We've talked about this in previous episodes, including Whiteboard Wednesday, that when people look at kata can be translated as kind of an implication, right? That we're always going to win, right? Simply by knowing it. And I know we're not going to fight with the kata itself, but that we have the serious advantage. Okay, but the ninja's mindset is very, very different, right? So therein lies why we do this ninja no hachimon training, and why we go into a lot of this stuff much more deeply, because they train to control the conditions of conflict, right? And they train to be able to set the stage for winning, for a victory, whatever term you like, right? Before a confrontation happened. Okay? And so we'll talk about some of these things, but one of the things that goes into it is first understanding the ways that I could be attacked. Okay, the ways the ninja's going to look at. Okay, what's going on? How do warriors, right? How do fighters? How do attackers attack? How might I be attacked, right? So how does the street thug do his thing? What if it's 3 or 4 of them on the street corner, and they're looking for an easy target? My guy that just came down from upstate New York, he's a tall guy. He's a tall dude. He's taller than James. He's a Catholic priest, and he's been stationed, I guess we'll call it, in certain areas where walking home at night, right, through some pretty rough areas. He was just sharing a story earlier about getting this weird vibe, right? We talk about I think Saki is James Saki. Is that in that's in Ninja no Hachimon, right? No, not Ninja no Hachimon. It's in the Seishin Tegi book. I think I put that in there. Anyway, so picking up on this intent, right, from a bad guy to get you. And he's telling a story about walking home, and these teenagers, they were across the street on the street corner, and all of a sudden he got this weird sensation, right? And he looked, and there they all were, just watching him. He said the feeling he got was that they were trying to decide whether or not, this. James, how tall are you? 6'4"? What would you say Mike is height-wise?
I probably get
6'5", 6'7".
5. That's
6'5", 6'6". Yeah. So whether he was, worth being a target. So that defense started long before anything physical ever happened. Now, the defense technique that he used was he stopped and locked on and looked at them like, if I'm going out, somebody else is going with me, right? And they disconnected, went about their business, talked smack, that kind of thing, and he walked home, okay? Because he had no idea, weapons, whatever, right? But if we begin by recognizing how we might be attacked, then we can reverse engineer that and start to recognize what kind of skills we might need or whatever, okay? But before we talk about 21st century, let's go back here to the olden days, right? And so if a ninja, right, a bunch of centuries ago, was looking around, what would they think of as far as being attacked? And this is where most people who see ninjutsu as a martial art and not a system with a martial, the fighting aspect is just one part. This is where they go amiss, because everybody wants to jump to, well, they get attack you with swords and spears and hands and feet and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but that wasn't the only thing the ninja were worried about, right? There was oppression of the time, right? There was a social class system, so there were things that prevented one from moving between classes, right? Moving up the ladder, so to speak. People talk about oppression today. I think I should take them to different parts of the world and have them visit other people I've met. Anyway, so, but is that it? No, of course not, right? Interpersonal relationships, all kinds of things, right? So if we're looking at things today, right, how many attacks or how many challenges, how many conflicts are we in daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? And yet most of us haven't had to duck a punch or haven't had a knife pulled on us. But we've been in arguments. We've navigated office or workplace politics. We've had a coworker or a significant other or one of our kids or whatever pissed off at us, or what, right? So these are areas where ninjutsu shines, Okay. Um, if we were going to highlight just a few, right? Um, what we're really looking at is how mental mastery, right, controlling our own head, so that we don't feel the need to argue just because somebody comes at us with their own vitriol or hatred, or right, I'm the wrong religion, I'm the wrong political affiliation, which, believe it or not, moderates and independents are wrong to everybody. So we've got twice as many enemies, um, which is really freaking funny. So, but I'm wrong. Pick something, right? But uh, mastering our own mental ability and stability, right? Adaptability, the ability to change as change is needed, and not just be this fixed, right? This is just the way I am, right? I mean, like, I had no other choice. Okay, well, now we've got a problem, right? Because unless things are going perfectly well, what's that old saying? If all you have is a hammer, every problem's a nail. Okay, well, that's problematic. Okay, and strategic thinking, right? So mental mastery, adaptability, and strategic thinking, right, are core to ninjutsu's advantage, not just the physical fight. Right, the number of times that I have heard Hatsumi Sensei, and I haven't been to all classes. However, the number of times that I've heard Hatsumi Sensei talking about something and working or dealing with something, um, technique wise, fight wise, or whatever, in the dojo, and then at the end of this, we'll be talking about the strategy or the tactics, or how to go about controlling things, and he'll stop and just say, "Not just a good martial arts idea. This is a good life idea, or not just a good martial arts skill. This is a life skill," right? And so the ability to see beyond, right, and to develop a skill set that is prepared for as many different situations as possible is really the key. And that's where these two systems kind of come in that I'll take a look at, that will, at least partially, right? But what do we tend to do? What do human beings tend to do when they think about martial arts, or they think about fighting, or whatever? Right? They lean into what they're already good at, or what their, in all honesty, their limited experience tells them they should need. Like, if everybody in the neighborhood, the fist fights that happen are all generally based on Western boxing, right? Then that's what they're going to lean into, okay? Or based on their size or their personality type or whatever, they gravitate to that thing, and then that's what they get good at. Okay? And I understand what MMA tries to do. I get it. But if you watch fighters in the MMA ring, you can see what their primary is. And the other ones are there to help set up or get out of situations where it's not the same. But what do they not have to worry about? Well, they don't have to worry about weapon being pulled. They don't have to worry about a second or third or fourth combatant, right, or opponent coming into the ring. They don't have to worry about those walls not being there. They don't have to worry about them having to defend themselves in a sea of people. Right? In a sea of people. Right? Can you imagine being at a concert and who knows why? Accidentally bump into somebody. He's whacked out on some recreational pharmaceuticals, whatever, right? The concert's not going his way. His now ex that came in with a girlfriend, and she dumped him right in the middle of everything. Right now he's pissed off. Who knows, right? But we don't have the open dojo space to move around in, or we're in our own living room, whatever, right? So all that changes. Okay, I'm not saying those things are not functional, right? I watch fights. Just watched another, couple of them today, because I was paying attention to strategy and how these different fighter types approach things. right? So, so what I want to do is I want to take a look at this thing called the Ninja no Hachimon, these 8 gates, right? But we're going to look at this as a structured framework, okay, that ensured that a ninja's preparation covered all required skills, including psychological mastery, right? And not just the skills that fit into a nice, neat box for fights that happen within a certain structure, or whether they're spoken, unspoken, written, unwritten, rule structure, right? That we're actually prepared to survive attacks, right? There's 3 aspects to a ninja. Miwo Shinobu, body capable of enduring, right? Which most people have a good handle on, right? Kokoro Shinobu, a mind capable of enduring, surviving, right? Continuing on, persevering. And Shiko Shinobu, which is, you could call it heart, but it's that core aspect of us, right? That it's not the sum of our knowledge, and it's not the sum of our skills. It's who we are at our core, right? And it contains everything from perspective to our spirit, or when I say spirit, I'm not talking about soul. I'm not saying it's not that, but what I'm talking about is our vibrancy for life, right? That we haven't just thrown in the towel and decided that life sucks, or, well, my lot in life is this, so everything else that I would need to do to get what I want, well, that's not possible for me. Those kind of things, right? So there's a wide range to that. We've talked on Shikibu Shinobu in the past, but there are these 3 aspects, right? And so, but all 3 of them can be attacked. Yes, they're all tools, but they can all be attacked. So how do we handle those things, right? So we'll jump into 8 gates here in just a minute. We'll see who else jumped on and see if there's any questions, whatnot. And then we're gonna bump into something, because I just decided that as we're re-releasing the Ninja Hachimon, I have a light version of this full program. We've got this 11 module. Carl and a bunch of folks, that was their way into training with me way back in the day. Would you say it was 2009? It was the first program I put together, and it answered the question, do you really know what is supposed to be a part of this thing called ninjutsu, right? How do you know you're doing it right? So, but I have a light version. Then I've got this full immersion kind of thing. But what I decided to do was to toss in an extra little bonus, right, for anybody that gets the Hachimon. I'm calling it a quick start course, but the light course. If they get that, of course, if they get the full course, they get everything anyway. But there's a workbook that I have, a student workbook on the ninjas Juhake from the Togakure school, right? And it has been some expansion stuff and all that. So because I decided to toss that in, we'll go into that a little bit. But anyway, let's do this. Just kind of move my screen around. James, how are we doing? Did the flickering catch resolve itself, or are we still having problems?
Still every once in a while, but it's not recurring as often now. For the most part, it's okay.
Maybe it's my ninja juju. It's just screwing things up. I don't know. Anyway, who else is on? Anybody else? Any questions, comments?
Victor and Dave signed in. And Carl said his first course was actually Ninja Mind, and then he
Ninja Mind
after the fact.
Did I do Ninja Mind first?
No.
Really? Okay.
He did it right after Ninja Mind.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so no questions then?
Yes,
everything's good?
We're good.
Okay, cool. Dave's like my sticky booger guy in a good way, right? Not in a bad way, right? Dave jumped in, and I'm glad to hear that Victor's wife and employer allowed him to have some time to himself.
Mhm.
He decided that, I don't know, the cats were taken care of, and he's he's like the mirror of my wife. She's the cat woman. He's the cat dude. So like all the strays in town knows where he lives. At least I think they do. I don't see nearly as many pictures. Now I see all sword stuff. Anyway, all right. So let me just jump back over here, and we'll go through this. So I'm gonna. This is not gonna do things the justice that it could, I guess, because of the time we have. But again, I didn't get a chance to get everything, all the working pieces in place that I wanted to have before this kicked off. Because if it did, then I was going to just let everybody know they can go ahead and get the worksheet that I put together. But a while back, I don't even know when I put this together. It's probably time-stamped in the computer file. But for my students, I made a worksheet that has 3 sections to it. And it's just a single page study tool. And so down, I guess it would be, if you're looking at me, down the left side is the traditional, like it's the list, right, from ancient Japan. Okay. And then on the right side, I have study areas or technology and whatnot that would be the modern day equivalent. Okay. And I'll give you, for instance, for one of these, but I'm not going to, we just don't have the time for me to go through all of these. Right. And then what's more important, the biggest important piece is the middle section, which actually is the reason why, right? The principles and concepts for why that left column, why those things are even on the list to begin with. Okay. So it's just a 1-page tool. I'm giving that away. We'll send that an email to everybody tomorrow, and they can download that. And then they can decide if they want more training or not. But the things that are on the list, right? Again, a lot of people look at lists and just accept it at face value because, well, that was duh. It's the list, right? So there it is. Okay. So it's kind of like that blind follower kind of thing, which is so not a ninja mindset. Okay. Not that ninja were contrarians, but there's the, how does this serve me? And how does this serve me as an underdog, right? Who is going to be outgunned. The person I'm fighting, they've got better refined weapons. They could be in armor. There's more of them than there is of me. If I get caught and tortured, they're going to know where my family is. Or if I run, if they can track me or identify me, then it's not just me looking over my shoulder. I got to worry about my family, my friends, my acquaintances, my community, all kinds of things, right? So these things were there for an advantage, or to give them an advantage. But once you see what's there, and a lot of you might be able to regurgitate the list, right? But the question should be why, right? How does this serve me? Okay. I think that's a huge piece of the mindset, right? So again, it's a structured framework, and these were like minimum study areas. Okay? So the original Ninja Hachimon has Kiai, right? Ninja no Kiai, right? Ninja no Taijutsu, right? Ninja no Ken, which is sword. So Ninja no, right? No is a connector, right? It's a kind of a possessive thing, kind of like Ichimonji no Kaman, right? Okay, so it is a type of Kaman, right? This thing. I'll mention something else here at the end. So Ninja no Ken, Ninja no Shuriken, Ninja no Soujutsu, right? Sojutsu is spear, right? I know in a lot of other realms and a lot of other arts, spear fighting, spear art is called yari jutsu because it's the art of the spear, right? But we call it soul jutsu. So is not just another way to say spear. Okay, uh, soul jutsu is actually monk's art, and that points to a connection to the Tendai temple on Hiezan. Right? There's a direct connection that we have in that direction. So Kiai, Taijutsu, Ken, Shuriken, Sojutsu, or Yari was at 5. And then we have Ninja no Uge, right? Deception, manipulation, influence. We have Ninja no Kajutsu, right? Which is fire and explosives, use of smoke, that kind of thing, right? And then we have Ninja no Kyomo. Kyomo. That's everything from philosophy to spiritual studies to knowledge and education. You'd be hard pressed to find a ninja list that didn't have at least one thing on the list that blew the list wide open. So it's not just 8. It's now how many things, right? Many more. It's kind of like our, I was just talking to somebody tonight about like our 16 fists, okay? 9 of which are made with the hand, right? The other ones are other parts of the body, but you have like Taiken is the body itself, right? Throw somebody, drop on them, right? Or shove them up against the wall, drop the body into them, that kind of thing. Body weight and motion. But there's this other one, Shizenken, natural weapons. Okay, so what are natural weapons? Well, teeth, fingernails, jaw, shoulder, anything that's not on the list. But that's the crux. Anything that's not on the list, that's a part of my body that I can use, right? Shizenken. Okay, so it's that one term that's there that, yeah, it fills in some gray areas, but it makes the list way bigger than 16. Right? All ninja lists are open-ended, very different from most Bushido lists that are very, very structured, very controlled. I'm sure you've had conversations with martial artists who, in our style, we have 5 throws, we have 13 fists, we have, right, and they'll name these things off, and that is a differentiator between what they're doing and what somebody else is doing. Okay, so watch for that when you're catching up on things. Okay, so again, I'll go over this fairly quickly. Well, a couple of these areas anyway. When you see the worksheet, and some of you guys are my students, so you already have it, so you know what I'm talking about. But just very, very briefly, right? Ninja no Kiai, right? Most people know what a Kiai is, right? It's just shout. Okay. In the martial arts, right? And we get a general feel or purpose for what it's for, right? It's to startle him. It's but there's different types of Kiai. Okay. So how does the ninja approach the idea of Kiai? Because Bushi knew about Kiai, right? What's the difference here? Okay. And so if you have Hatsumi Sensei's book, the first one that came out in English, Ninjutsu History and Tradition, there's a whole section in the back. There's 4 types of Kiai that are listed that come out of the Togakure school. Victoria Shout and Shadow Shout, those kind of things, right? But coming out of our Mikyo, there's a whole other structure for 5, right? Coming out of other Japanese philosophical kind of things, and I believe also imported from China, right? The Japanese word for this from Shinto and some of these other areas is called kotodama. Kotodama. Kotodama means sound spirit, right? And so a lot of these things point to more than just shouting, screaming, surprising him or confusing him or whatever. What we're really looking at is the use of vibration, right? And so if we turn this inwardly, right, in not just Mikyo, but in other areas as well, in our Kuji, in the Goshinbo, psychological self-protection, we have this concept of mantra, right? And don't take the mantra thing too far. People often get like all squirrely because they heard from a religious leader or whatever that speaking in tongues and that's bad, and it's another way to communicate, right? We tend to do it. I tend to lean into the Japanese transliteration of the Chinese transliteration of the original Tibetan or Indian Sanskrit or Pali, because I don't speak like that normally, and that only holds one meaning for me. But if we could just get past the idea that this is speaking, as a matter of fact, the next time you're talking, because I'm aware of it now while I'm doing this, right? I can feel the vibrations, not just in my vocal, not just in my voice box, but resonating down my chest, out into my torso. It's affecting those kind of things. So as I speak, and if I change the pitch up or down, right, the vibration changes, right? And there's plenty of scientific studies as to how this affects us as we're when we're speaking to somebody, right? If we're speaking to somebody of the same sex or gender, a different one, if there's attraction, intimacy, whatever going on, right? Dropping to a lower tone, but also slowing the tempo, right? As opposed to picking it up much higher and also increasing the tempo, right? It changes the energy that's going on. It adds more to the communication than just what the words are doing, right? And so I don't know how many folks have listened to that aspect when I'm teaching. I don't care if it's on the floor. I don't care if it's during KUDEN or Whiteboard Wednesday or whatever. Many, many years ago, I was made aware of this and took it upon myself to train myself to keep those things changing, right? So it didn't just create one pace, one pitch, one tone, one feel, right? It's always fast, it's always slow, it's always high, where it moves, right? Because that affects someone's mind in a way where it makes them continue to pay attention because it's not the same, right? Now, it has to match what it is that I'm trying to convey, right? So I don't want to sound like a boring university professor. And so what we're discussing today is, right, where it's all the same, right? It makes us fall asleep, right? Or we can get lost because the person's going too fast. Or it can, depending on who we are as an individual, the pitch can be too high, or it can be, I don't know if it can be too low, but maybe, right? Depending on their quality of their hearing apparatus and whatnot. So, but I'm also paying attention. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm not looking at your faces, right? But if I'm in a conversation with someone, then I'm looking for feedback, right? Are they engaged? Are they, right? Because I want to make sure that comprehension is occurring, right? This is also part of Ki. Ki is the things that people think it is martial arts wise, but that's like the omote, it's like the obvious, right? This is the ability to use our voice and sound and resonance and that kind of frequency to affect outcomes. Not just scare them, pull them in to attain what it is that we're trying to attain. Could just be comprehension, right? Am I being clear? But it could also be setting a mood, right? It could be a certain type of mood, if you know what I'm saying. But it could also be somebody needs to get their head out of their 7th point of contact, or there's going to be hell to pay, right? Well, see, that was kind of high pitched, and I don't know, somebody, right, who might be concerned about me because of my skill set or whatever might take that seriously, right? But if I change that and right, anybody's in the military knows that, the lieutenant can come out and tell you to stand at attention, and linguistically it's correct, pronunciation is correct, but it just kind of comes across one way, right? Drill sergeant comes out, right, yells attend, just almost like a grunting push, right? And no one is going to go up and say, excuse me, Sergeant, the word is attention, not this grunting thing, right? You're at attention, and you're paying attention, and you're not moving, because one of these guys comes across like they could rip off your head, shit in your neck, and call it a day, and the other one is trying to convince you that they're in charge, or they're this role or something, but there's a disconnect somewhere. Okay. So on the worksheet, what you'll see is I have those kind of things, but I also have NLP, which is, I had to abbreviate because I need to keep everything on one page, but NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Does that mean that you have to study that? No, of course not, right? But the more I understand about how the structure of my words, choice of words, tone, pitch, inflection, all that kind of stuff, right, affects someone, the more control I have over that experience, that situation, right? So it's very, and again, that's just one thing that's on there, right? Because that listing, right, that was the right column, is just things that could be studied in addition to the conventional, obvious ki that's listed in certain places, or that somebody might have learned from somewhere else or whatever. Okay, so that's there, right? Ninja no Taijutsu. Not only does it not change on the list, but I am a huge proponent of and believer that we shouldn't be adjusting our taijutsu, because that's not the way people fight anymore. Right? Historically, if we understood that, like the reason that our kamae and our posturing and this profiling and things like that are set up the way they are, was largely due to the proliferation of weapons. Right? Everybody had them. Right? There were sharp things that if they touched you, pieces of your body would fall off, or parts of your body would leak, right? And if enough falls off, or the right things fall off, or you get enough leakage occurring, well, then you get to go see your ancestors, right? But early to mid, at a minimum, but mid to late Edo period, things really, on the fight scenes, things really started to change. Okay? And then it just kept moving, right? Until in today's world, look at the band. Unless you're looking at traditional sumo, right, or martial arts, look at the guys that are fighting, right? They're in MMA, they're in boxing. I just watched one of the things I was watching today was a Japanese boxer. He was fighting an American, but either way. And so, but what you see is that things go from this profiled on profiled position to minimize targets, largely because of weapons, to more nose to nose, toe to toe, square on. Because, I mean, how hard does somebody have to hit you to make your heart stop, to, rupture an organ, whatever, right? It's not the same, right? And so a lot of that just kept changing more and more, and influence from the West and things like that, right? All the way up to modern times. But the reason that I give for us still doing now, here's the thing. We're doing the taijutsu as it's been passed down, but we have to study and understand how to use that way against a modern fighter, not against ski or just a front stomp kick or these linear kind of things, because they were developed for a reason. Right? Now we have to worry about jabs, and we have to worry about hooks and uppercuts, and we also have to worry about weapons coming to bear. This guy may draw a weapon. He may draw a firearm. He may pull a knife that I didn't know he had. He may reach back on a table and grab a hammer. Whatever, right? So the reason I say, or the reason I come at this, where we need to understand how to use the stuff as it's been passed down against the modern fighter, rather than succumbing to the same modification, is because if a knife is suddenly pulled in a situation that we're dealing with, adaptation for us is going to be very slight, right? I might shift from Ichimonji or Kosei or something like that to a Hoko, and then modify from palms out inside of the forearms, which is where all the life-sustaining tubes are, to, right, knuckles come to bear and the muscles of the back of the arm. Yeah, he can still cut you. He can. But the amount of cutting he has to do to the back of my arm, that will, one, cause me to bleed to death, right? Or squirt like Spider-Man, as opposed to the inside of the arm. And the amount of cutting he has to do to shut down my ability to make a fist, which is done by all the muscles on the inside of the arm and hand, right? The muscles on the outside of the arm open the hand. But to close it, to make a fist, to grab, those kind of things, right? Will it be inhibited? Sure, of course. But where is everything that I need to grab him, to hit him, to, right? And to not leak to death, right? So I can make that adjustment. It's going to be much easier for us to adjust to the sudden appearance of a weapon using a system based primarily on defending against weapons than it is for someone to adapt who has slipped into this modern thing where, right, it's all about fist fights, or it's all about grappling or whatever. And so you're square with each other, which means that you're presenting all your targets. And if a weapon suddenly comes to bear, to say that it's going to be more difficult for that person to adapt to dealing with a weapon is an extreme understatement. Okay? So for the modern side of the Ninpo Taijutsu, it's in not sticking to the introductory lessons in the dojo and sticking to only like attacks with, these linear ski and whatever, right? To not just do the heavy-handed knife stabs and whatnot. Different types of fighters, and understanding how to match up kamae and strategies and tactics and whatnot without slipping over into their realm, right? Without throwing away 90% of what you've learned. Okay. Nijino Ken, Nijino Shuriken, and Nijino Yari, right? In today's world, I guess you could try to carry a sword or a spear or shuriken, right, around. But in a lot of places, right, entire countries, provinces or states here in the United States, or local municipalities, they're probably not going to go well, right? But what if we could get past the item and what the item looks like, right? What if we were really talking about long range, mid range, and close range weapons? Okay? Long range weapon as a projectile weapon, mid range weapon as a impact weapon or a stick or staff weapon, and close range weapon as an edge weapon. But we already have modern equivalents. You got a short stick of some sort, right? Could be an asp, telescoping baton, whatever. It could be, for some police officers, could be a PR-24 or some other nightstick, if they're still using that kind of thing. For us, it could be whatever is close at hand kind of thing, right? Close range weapon, a knife, right? And projectile weapon could still be shuriken, or it could be something I'm throwing, whatever, but it could also be firearms. Again, depending on where you live, what you might be up against. I believe that everybody should train with those things, because just because it's illegal where you are doesn't mean the bad guy's not going to show up with one. And if you do a disarm, it might be a good idea if you at least know how to use that, and you don't do what you see in the damn movies where the person just like tosses it off to the side. So what? Some kid can pick it up, or some other thug can grab it and run off with it, or whatever, right? Anyway, so what if it's not about the weapon itself? Because we have to remember that back in the day, right, those things, the sword, the spear, or naginata, halberd, and the shuriken and whatnot, or the yumiya, right, the bow and arrow from Kyudo, right, as a long range weapon. That was the technology of the day. If we understand that the ninja always leaned into the best technology available to give themselves the greatest advantage, whatever's new, right? That's what. If you picked up the Seishin Techie book, I kept that to 11 core principles and didn't cross over into things that some people might, think were too woo, and also to keep the book manageable. But as other things came along, what they might have seen as sciences of the day or other things that would help them with confidence or personal development, or not being not, even though they were subjects based on the regions that they lived in and whatnot, not feeling like they were shit on. Okay. Having a sense of personal power and whatnot, and controlling the narrative, right? That kind of thing. So it doesn't matter what realm we're looking at. Right? So a lot of people will drop things off the training because, well, who needs that stuff, right? I mean, one, that's a ninja movie thing, so I'm not going to use it. Two, who uses swords or who uses spear or stabs or whatever? It's pointless, right, for today's world, really. Okay. Interesting. Okay, because I was taught that if I learn sword, when I'm holding a knife, if I see the knife as a sword with an extremely short blade, I have two things going for me. One, I'm not limited by what I originally thought of as far as the knife goes. And two, I now have an expanded set of techniques because I can just modify sword techniques using this thing. Okay. And three, if I want to lean into this, okay, be careful. We always have to be careful saying that, like, when's that ever going to happen? Because history is rife, and I mean modern history is rife with people going on vacation to foreign lands, the Caribbean, whatever, and being attacked by bandits who came at them with machete, or that's what they had laying around, but because they didn't see it as a weapon or a possibility or whatever, then they didn't bother picking it up. Okay, because to me, a machete is just another form of a short sword. Right? But again, if we get stuck on shape, but people will discard things, like the folks that had a hard time getting their head wrapped around, why the hell am I talking about a spear in the upcoming spring camp when the focus is on using stuff for modern self-defense? Well, there's a lot the spear can teach us that can seriously elevate all of our other shorter weapons and our taijutsu. Okay? If we don't just see a spear as a long staff with a poker on the end of it. Excuse me. Okay. Kajutsu, see, sensei, now you're starting to get into like legality things and why would you buy? Okay, well, what if it's not just about using it for the reasons that they used it, right? Could be, right? How could I use things like that? But in that realm with fire and smoke and explosives was also using reflected light to affect his sight, right? It was also inducing fear in a way that person would be shook, not just momentarily concerned, but shook to their core, right? Why fire and explosives? Well, in ancient Japan, you're talking about a society that was built with wood and paper. Not wooden paper, but wood and paper, right? So fire was an ever-present danger, right? You start a fire, you got people trying to put out the town, right? Or put out this little thing before it turns into something really, really big, right? It's sows fear, disorder, panic, all kinds of things, right? But what else? Where else would that lean? Okay, I think it also leans into wilderness survival stuff because people look at fire, and it was like the ninja had this special way of no, it was how they decided to use the fire. Okay, it was also used for distractions. Right, so this leans into a whole other area. What if it's not about the fire? What if it's about the distraction? What if it's about how the smoke affects his eyes, his nose, that kind of thing, his ability to keep his eyes open and stay focused, right? Shutting down certain sensory systems, right? Those kind of things, right? But it also leads into wilderness survival skills and all those other things that people would like to say are not in the scrolls. Yeah, I know they didn't teach you how to walk or breathe, right, in the scrolls either, unless they were giving you special walking methods or special breathing methods. The assumption is if you have to move from point A to point B, you're going to walk. So some things are so obvious that why would I write it down? Right? In those days, if you wanted to cook something, you had to start a fire. You had to light a fire. You had to know how to do that just offhand. Most people can't do that today. Okay? Some don't even know how to flick a bic or get a lighter going. Okay? So what else is in there? Right? What else did they do on a regular basis, an everyday basis that we could use? Okay? Nijo uge, right? Deception, manipulation, those kind of things. These tend to have a bad term, right? But what if this is about controlling the narrative? What if this is about understanding and assessing somebody's personality type, needs, wants, desires, fears, those kind of things? So maybe the Kyuji Tenkan and the disguising truth and falsehood and whatnot is not about getting one over on them. What if it's about helping somebody get what they need or getting over a blockage or a hindrance, especially if you're an instructor, right? What if it's about soliciting help or eliciting help from other people because you can't do what you're doing all on your own, and establishing a narrative that is a win-win situation so that the person actually wants to help. They're actually getting something out of it other than a free lunch or other than because you feel good for helping your friend or those kind of things that are always come across as one-sided. Okay? What if we're not just ad hoc throwing out a sales pitch, but we're actually creating a narrative that takes those things into account that make a person say yes, that makes a person see the helping or the involvement or whatever as something that actually is beneficial for what they want. Okay. This is a huge thing in general sales, right? Which is a bad word within the martial arts, which is why we don't use that term within the dojo. Okay. We use terms like enrollment and agreement and things like that rather than sign up and contract and things like that, because people have certain sensitivities. And within my realm, with my best students, they have certain beliefs about business people, salespeople, those kind of things. And so, right, our process is based around exactly who and what we are: educators and confidants and coaches and whatnot. So the whole process of somebody enrolling in the dojo feels like, because it is, feels like they're being assisted by somebody who's going to be there long term to help them learn skills and whatnot to make their life better anyway, right? But if I didn't know that and I came at it, sign up, right? So this program over here, this program over here, see, walls are going to go up, right? Defense mechanisms are going to go up. Okay. So again, deception, manipulate, it's a broad category for getting someone to agree or getting someone to do something because they see it in their best interest and because they want to. They think it's their decision. Right? You ever fight with a teenager? Okay. What if you didn't have to? As a parent, right? Or as a teacher? It's that kind of idea. Okay. And then what about Ninja Kyomon? Well, see, Ninja Kyomon, Hatsumi Sensei framed that originally to me as to be called a ninja is to be called a true lady or gentleman. You are a well-rounded, knowledgeable individual. Okay. So from a Jonin level's perspective, and even a Chunin level's perspective, the more you know, the more circles you can travel in, the more groups you can associate with and not feel out of place, right? Not feel intimidated, those kind of things. So, and also the more I learn about things in different realms, the more that's going to feed into these other areas, right? Because I'm not just going to be memorizing things and then spitting them back. Okay. But the biggest reason I think Ninja no Kyomon is there, from my perspective, right, as a base level for everybody, is so that it's harder for other people to use the deception and manipulation tactics on you. It's harder to blow smoke up your butt. Okay? Because the less we know, or the more we're led around by our own confirmation bias, that means we only look at things, read things, see things, agree with things, or whatever, that are already what we already believe. People have no idea how easy it is to manipulate. Zero. Right? And they think they're being super, super intelligent. Right? But they have less. The more sure they are about their one way or their belief system or their perspective or whatever, the more susceptible they actually are to control tactics. Okay? The easier it is to present them with an enemy, right? Somebody to hate, right? The easier it is to put them on one side or the other of a polarizing dichotomy. It's very, very difficult to do that to people who know more, critically think, and don't easily gravitate to either one side or the other. Right? They understand that life is varying shades of grays and not so black and white. Right? So, but it's there to make sure that we're not the ones being deceived. Okay. So again, this is about mental and strategic mastery, not just a list of moves, a list of techniques, whatever. Okay. Again, it's the point of the cheat sheet when you get it is to simplify the structure, right? So that folks can see how to upgrade and modernize or see a modern reflection of these principles and concepts that are timeless without scrapping half the shit and making something else up or just diluting it. People are always worried about the art being watered down. People do it all the time to themselves. Spear training is pointless. Sword training is pointless. Just not going to do it. So because I'm never going to have to worry about that from anybody, or when am I going to find a spear laying around or a sword laying around or whatever. So they just cut it from the mix. But right, a big weapon exposes errors in taijutsu, tactics, strategic thinking, and movement, all that kind of stuff, way better and way quicker than a smaller weapon. Right? Because it's in your damn way, and it'll hit you if you're not careful. Right? So it just, the bigger the weapon, the longer the weapon, the more it amplifies mistakes. Okay? So if you want to find your mistakes, do bigger movement. Even with your taijutsu, open the feet up farther, do bigger movement. You'll very quickly, right? As long as you're not quick to, wow, see, that's just stupid. I can't move from there. Why not? Okay? If you discover the why not and fix it, you'll be able to move from there. Because you'll know when your feet are too far apart, right? They'll slide out from under you. But as long as the soles can be flat on the floor, okay, well, I can't move quickly from there. Why not? Right? Tell me the why not, and not just the problem. Right? I detest people that tell me, but see, the problem is, stop telling me what the problem is. Have you thought about how to fix that? Right? How do you make that problem go away? Well, it can't. It's a problem. What that tells me is that somebody is looking for reasons to not do something, as opposed to, right? Again, not a ninja mindset. Right? Are there problems? Absolutely. Right? Death at somebody else's hands, huge problem. Right? But it's also a problem too to want a well-balanced, harmonious relationship, either with a friend or a family member or a significant other, and that's not occurring. Well, see, the problem is they don't like me. Okay, did they ever like you? Well, yeah, but they're different. Are they? Or are you both different? Or are you different? Huh? Ninja are problem solvers. They had to be. You're outnumbered. You're overwhelmed, right? And you're probably working alone as an advisor to a whole other friggin' army. You're the only one here that thinks this way. That speaks to needing, like, seishin, right? Which includes self-esteem and all kinds of stuff. Not an over-inflated sense of self, but having self-value and not shooting oneself in the foot because, well, the odds are against me. Maybe so. What are you going to do about it? Yeah. But again, right, you can see that, like, does that mean the ninja didn't learn the long staff? They didn't learn any of these other things? Nope. Just to learn to be able to use a spear, you actually have to be really, really good at a staff and really, really good at a sword. Because you have a cutting or stabbing implement on the end of a long pole. Same thing with a naginata, right? Or a nagamaki, right? Nagamaki, that was closer to a dachi, right? The big battlefield swords, right? Evolutionarily speaking, fits in there as well, right? But what you have is a long sword on a short stick, nagamaki, or a short sword on the end of a long staff, naginata. So I'm pretty sure you'd have to learn and be good at blades, because I typically, camp's going to be a little bit different, but in the evolution of things for my students have to learn staff and sword before they learn spear and naginata. Okay? But they're learning spear and naginata also because they have to be more precise with their striking and contact with the opponent's body, way more than they have to be with a staff, and they have to be able to do it from a distance, which means they have to have more control on the weapon, right? So there's more precision involved, right? But it's a compound weapon, right? It's not just a striking weapon. It's not just a cutting weapon, right? So anyway, James, any questions, comments, anything like that pop up just for that little section?
No, I don't see anything.
All right. Are we still? I'm not looking at that screen at the moment. Are we still doing okay numbers wise or whatever? We didn't lose everybody.
No, we're good.
Okay, awesome. All right. So let's jump into some expanded skills. Okay. So the Ninja no Hachimon, and this is a part of both the short course and a long course. Again, in ancient Japan, this was a litmus test to determine who was and who was not teaching actual ninjutsu. Okay. And remember, ninja no. So we're not just listing katana or kenjutsu. We're not just listing yari jutsu. We're not just listing, right? It's ninja no. How the ninja approaches this. Okay. So let's see. Should I mention this now or should I? No, I'll mention it a little bit here because again, the list is about to exponentially grow. Okay. So in the Togakure school, okay, these 8 skills, and they're not called the same thing, right? But they're all in there. Okay. In the Togakure school, there is this framework called the 18 levels of training, 18 disciplines, 18 training areas, skill sets, whatever, right? The Ninja Juhake, okay? Juhachi is 18, right? The hake is a contraction, right? So again, you've got these 18 disciplines, 18 areas. So this is where people tend to kind of focus because, well, I'm doing ninjutsu, so here's this, right? And again, here's an even bigger area for people to just ignore things, to just drop things off the list, okay? Because there's a bunch of things in there. I mean, and I'm not going down the list, but it leads off with Seishin Teki Kyoyo, which is spiritual refinement, personal development, mental work, philosophy, that kind of stuff, right? So that's where Ninja Kyomon is. It's over here. And Kyomon is in other places as well, okay? Because there's also Tenmon Chimon, right? Meteorology and geography, okay? Understanding and how to read the lay of the land, which is a block of knowledge, being able to read weather patterns and understand, different clouds and whatnot. Is it going to rain? Is it going to be windy? Is it, those kind of things. So again, a lot of these things, right, fit within the Kyomon. Okay, a big thing within the Togakure school was, and ironically, it's not a part of the basic 18. It's actually a hidden. It's the secret of secrets within the Togakure-Ryu, which is the Goton pole, the Ura Goton, right? The Jupo Tento, Tento Jupo, yeah. So you get these 20 skill areas, right, for doing different things. Again, it's a lot of it's still just part of the Kyomon, right? But there are some duplications, right? So you've got Bojutsu, you've got word. What else is in there? There's stealth. There's chain and sickle weapons. There's Bajutsu, right, which is horsemanship. There's just a wide range of things, right? Again, I'm not diving in to the list, but this is another one of those areas where folks want to like drop things like horsemanship. I mean, like, why? Right? I mean, like, I don't own horses. I don't have horses. What if it's not about horses? What was the technology of the day? They didn't have any damn cars or motorcycles. They didn't even have bicycles. Okay, so what was the primary means of transportation other than your feet? And if you were going by wagon, people were using these things as well, right? So horses, how to saddle them, how to bridle them, how to ride bareback, all that kind of stuff, right? If I'm escaping and there's a horse, right? That would be cool, right? It allows me to get from point A to point B faster, all those kind of things, right? So here's this thing that, again, if we're fixated on the list, we have a hard time updating things without either watering it down by dropping shit. And it's funny, people are always like, the purists are always complaining that people have been watering things down by loosening up standards or testing requirements. Like, like the Bujinkan has ever had testing requirements, or whatever. When they pick and choose what the hell they want to train off the list of, and that goes for the Gyoko, Koppo, whatever, right? Or they're being a purist and the list says Bajutsu, so I'm going to learn horsemanship. Okay? I tend to do both. Okay? The Omote is, well, that's the historical list, and I can see a benefit to that. Who knows? I don't know where my life is going to take me. We all like to assume that, well, that's never going to happen. Really? Interesting. Okay? Well, I hope for your sake, it never does. Okay? But my wife and I like to travel. Part of traveling, we like to cruise, like on ships and whatnot. And whenever we go to these ports of call, very often there are like these excursions that you can pay for. And sometimes they're tours, right? History things. And sometimes they're just, go to the beach and have drinks and dip your toes in the water. So whatever, right? But sometimes, right, what pops up is a horse guided tour, right? You're going to ride. Okay. And I know these horses are trained and all that kind of stuff, but horses are animals, and animals can get skittish and whatever. So it'd be cool if, right, I knew how to get on a horse, get off a horse, not falling on my head, be able to control it, calm it down, those kind of things. Okay. So I did take it upon myself more than several years ago to learn to do English riding, because English riding, no offense to anybody that does Western riding, but my experience is Western riding, you don't have as the skill set's not as diverse. Okay? The saddles are heavier, but anyway, there's just more that you have to do to control the horse, to not fall off the horse. The saddle's only yay big, that kind of thing. But my teacher, who was also one of my students, and I didn't find this out until after I didn't fall off the horse, moved me into bareback riding for greater skill and whatnot. So I wasn't relying on all the gear and that kind of things. And that included jumping, by the way, jumping obstacles and whatnot. And I didn't find out until after he got frustrated because I didn't fall off the horse, that one of the primary reasons he accelerated my training and moved me into bareback riding was because I threw him down a lot in the dojo and he was just trying to pay me back. And so that was fair. But anyway, but what's the primary means of transportation today? I guess it depends on where you live, but how many different types of vehicles can you operate? Okay. Because that's what Bajutsu was about. It was an alternate means of transportation. Again, the technology of the day. So I get it, right? We all learn how to drive. At what point does our skill set and skill development and skill proficiency stop? When we're able to get from point A to point B and, usually not have an accident or whatever, right? But how far could that be taken as a skill set? Okay. Some of us, right, whether it's security realm or in my case, it was bodyguard and police work and whatnot, learning. Yeah, I understand defensive driving, but you know what? There's also something called offensive driving. And I don't mean just being an asshole on the road. I mean being able to control that vehicle in high-speed pursuits and on wet and wet road surface and different types of road surfaces. Because I promise you, that going a certain speed on macadam or asphalt, whatever you may have where you live, is different than concrete. Wet concrete is different than cobblestone, right? Or worn brick. The traction and friction coefficient is very, very different. And there's a different feel of the vehicle. Okay? Do they even have manual steering except in high-end sports cars anymore? Manual transmission, right? As opposed to automatic. Having a problem with your car, can you operate your automatic as though it were a manual? Okay? Why would you do that, Sensei? I know how and why I had to do it. However, right? But again, what's your skill proficiency level? Right? Is it average, normal? Are you able to flee from somebody who's trying to frickin' kill you and not plow into a tree or a wall because after a certain speed or under certain conditions or whatever, your skill set runs out. Okay? You don't have to be able to operate a vehicle, right, at high speeds or whatever because you're a getaway driver or because you're fleeing from the cops or you're just out freaking joyriding and stuff. Can you? We did training back in the day, cost a pair of tires, but we went to at least once I remember going to a school parking lot on a Sunday and learning how to and practicing doing donuts so that we could practice doing 180s and 270s and whatever, right? So that we could do better high-speed maneuvers should we have to get away from somebody. Right? Now, law enforcement, we had to learn those things because we had to catch up to somebody, right? Of course, we also had Motorola, the radios. Okay, our motto was you can't outrun Motorola. But anyway, so see what I have in my notes here, right? So the Juhake, right, is an expanded framework that allowed the ninja to do several things. One, to counter samurai tactics. What kind of tactics? Okay. Why would the use of the ninja sword, other than shorter and drawing faster and whatnot, right? Why is Togakure-Ryu sword based more on spear than on sword? We don't have time to go into that. However, right, as long as not making assumptions about things, why is that there, right? Why the different types of spear? Why, right? Okay, but what do they have coming in at them, right? And so, right, how do I neutralize, not only neutralize a samurai's superior reach with a katana, because I'm going to have a shorter sword, right? But how do I strip that from him? How do I unbalance it, right? That's where the secret sword stuff came in. Okay? There are these 9 patterns that are an introduction to different ways to, right? Receive, strip, use it against them, unbalance, that kind of thing. Had a lot to do with circular movement. Right? Again, it's understanding samurai tactics so that we can counter them. Okay. It's also for using deception, right? The Kyu's Tenkan, right? To mislead opponents. Okay. Because if everybody tends to be fighting the same way and we come at them differently, now they're going to have to figure things out, right? They're going to have to make things up, right? But so I'm leaving parts off of these little descriptions here. This last one is going to open it up, right? It's developed a more complete skill set that went far beyond just fighting. Right? Because the ninja skill set also includes escape and evasion. I understand. Some of us can't not fight. I don't care if it's an argument or a fist fight or whatever. We can't brush it off. Can't let it go. Right? I understand. Some people have a need. Right? This is the way they make their bones. This is the way that they make sure everybody else knows that they're the toughest kid on the block. I get it. Right? But what if the person I'm dealing with or the situation I'm dealing with, I mean, if it's an argument, right, and I punch them in the face or, break their leg or whatever, yeah, I guess I won that fight because they stopped talking. Now they're screaming and that's annoying. However, I'm going to jail. Yeah, it's just the way the laws are written. Right? In ancient Japan, well, see, you had certain leeway because if they disrespected you, right? Yeah, we don't live in the same world. Right? Same thing, right? If I've got financial struggles or whatever, what am I going to do? Go out and sell onikodakis or sell kamae to make some extra money or, right? So there's, right? But here's something, right? I know that the list of 18 is the thing that gets circled around, and it's attached to Hatsumi Sensei's first book in English, right? The Ninjutsu History and Tradition. I get it, okay? But the Togakure ninja didn't have 18 skill levels, right? They had 36, okay? Because the Togakure ninja were required to know the standard 18 levels of training for Bushi as well. Otherwise, how do you counter samurai techniques if you don't know them and understand them? If you don't know their inherent strengths and weaknesses, how the hell do you counter it? Right? The Kyojutsu Tenkan, right? The deception to mislead opponents into thinking that they were fighting a conventional warrior. If I know them, then see, I'm not always doing ninja stuff. I could start off looking like I'm doing exactly what he knows and he's able to deal with until the last second. And a complete skill set, right? There's two lessons we need to understand about ninjutsu. Hatsumi Sensei covered a lot. Shrei Sensei repeated this stuff over and over again, right? It's just really, really important, and they should be just etched into your brain. One is that ninja skills are all variations of conventional warrior skills. Warriors had chain and sickle weapons. They just had a certain look and design to them. The ninjas were different, right? As in, like the samurai had kusari fundo or kusari gama, the chain and sickle, but the length of chain and the weight on it were way shorter than what the ninja typically used. Okay, they did not have a kyoketsu shoge, to my understanding. Again, the spear were different, the stabs were designed a little bit different, that kind of thing, right? But how do I make variations of something that I know nothing about? This is a point that Hatsumi Sensei made back in, I think it was 1998. I could be wrong on the year. We were at the Princeton Taikai, and Manaka Sensei had just recently left the Bujinkan. And let's see, Tanamura Sensei had left probably a decade before. But either way, I remember that because that was like the big thing, and Hatsumi Sensei had lessons about that as well, like that everybody needed what Manaka was teaching. Okay, but to take on teacher-student relationship at a certain level, you had to pick one because it was about lineage. But he made a huge point that Manaka Sensei was focusing on making sure that people's basics were better, and everybody needed what he had to teach. Well, sounds pretty slanderous, doesn't it? Anyway, he made this point, right? That this is all, it's all variations on the convention. But how do you do that? How do you make variations of something you don't understand? So that's where it was the very same weekend that he said, we're not going to do ninjutsu for a while because we need to focus on these conventional skills so that you will then be able to approach ninjutsu properly. Before that weekend was over, it went from we're going to take time away from ninjutsu for a while so we could focus on Budo and the conventional Budo skills. It went from that to we don't do ninjutsu, we only do Budo. We don't do Nippo Taijutsu, we only do Budo Taijutsu. It was like a bad game of telephone for anybody old enough to know what that is. Right? So, and then the other thing, right? So that's one side of the double-edged sword, right? Everything in ninjutsu, all ninjutsu skills are variations of conventional warrior skills. Does that mean that other things aren't added on? No, of course not. But you have to know the base before you can do the variation, right? And the other lesson is that nothing in ninjutsu is ever what it looks like. Okay. How do you know what it's supposed to look like in their mind so that they buy it so that you can deceive them? Okay. It's kind of like with Kyojutsu Tenkan, disguising truth and falsehood. At its very core, what most people miss is the Seishin Tenki Kyoyo, the personal development, spiritual refinement stuff that goes into the Kyojutsu Tenkan before you can ever deceive anybody properly. And that is, you must be very, very clear about what is actual truth so that you can perceive falsehoods. Not beliefs, not opinions, not, well, this is my truth, this is what I call it. Nobody gives a shit. You can't deceive people if they don't know what the hell you're talking about. I have a family member that's like, well, that's what I call it. Well, no wonder the people, you're always irritated because people always say they don't understand you. Right? You're using your own damn vocabulary. You're using your own damn dictionary. Okay? So on one side, we have, it's all variation of the convention. On the other side, it's nothing is ever what it looks like. Right down the middle, we've got this common theme, which is the samurais, right? The Bushi, and this list of 18 shifted with different eras. If anybody has access to or is interested, not that you're going to get it from me, but I believe it's available out there. You can go to the Genbukan website, I believe, and if not, it may still be available on Amazon, or who knows, you may find something floating around on the Budo winds. Tanomura Sensei's student manual, first level student manual for Genbukan students. There's a whole section on this. And remember, he was an original student of Hatsumi Sensei, and he trained with Takamatsu Sensei. Okay? He's Hatsumi Sensei's cousin. So there's a whole section on these 18 skill areas, and the Togakure had to know this stuff, and what these 18 skill levels would have looked like during a couple of different eras. Okay? So very interesting, yes. Right? So the either way, right? Whether you want to just focus on the Juhake, right? The Togakure's Ninja Juhake, or the full, where you've got the Omote, which is the Budo Juhake, right? The 18 skill areas for Budo or Bushido, and the Ninja Juhake, which would be the Ura, right? What this is really pointing out, right, is this allowed the ninja, it gave them a much more complete skill set, right? But it was a skill set that includes not just powerful methods for fighting, right? But for influencing people, for controlling emotions, yours and theirs, and achieving success in highly, highly unpredictable situations. Okay? I understand how hard it is to win a fight against somebody who's fighting the same way you are. I get it, right? That's unpredictable enough. Okay? Now imagine somebody who has carte blanche. It's one thing I learned as a police officer and in my time as a private security person and a bodyguard is that bad guys, whether you're trying to put somebody under arrest or we used to say apprehension, or they're somebody you're on the lookout for, right? Because you're in a bodyguard situation or whatever, is they're going to be highly unpredictable. Okay. Bad guys don't have the same kind of moral and ethical constraints, just like drunk people who don't want to go to jail and stuff like that. They don't have the same kind of moral and ethical constraints that quote unquote good guys do. They don't have the same kind of considerations. What that means is they're willing to do shit that we have already written off as unfair, uncool, cheating, whatever. Okay. They're already a bad guy for a reason, so right? So we need to be careful, like how this kind of stuff works, right? So before I jump into a story here that I have, and some of you may have already heard it, but where I really want to make this point that between the 8 gates and this ninja juhake, not being all about fighting or even half about fighting. I've got a story about Hatsumi Sensei and having to deal with a really bad adversary or opponent that nobody in their right mind would want to go up against. Okay, but he won. Cool, right? So before we do that, let's do another set of questions and comments before we kind of wrap this stuff up. So, what do we got?
I haven't seen anything come in.
Wow. All right. Either I put people to sleep or who knows. Anyway, all right. So let me get back to this. Is things stabilized at all, or we still having the same glitches?
It's stabilized for the most part. It's just here and there now, but nothing like it was.
Interesting. All right. Okay. Let me jump back over to my notes here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So got a quick story for you. I'll try to keep it quick, right? So Hatsumi Sensei, well, now he's in a nursing home, right? But for like as long as I knew him, right, he lived in this one house, right, in Nodashi, down this whole side street. And I think everybody knows about the Yakuza, right? Yakuza, people like to call them the Japanese mafia. If I had to deal with the mafia or the Yakuza, not that I want to deal with either one of them, I would want to deal with the mafia, okay? Because I just think the Yakuza are they're more cold and devious, but at the same time, like there's a moral and ethical code, and I know the mafia has one as well, but like people don't understand just how involved in their communities the Yakuza are, right? Like if there's an earthquake, okay, the Yakuza will have construction stuff and everything in there, cleaning up the mess and beginning the rebuild long before the government bureaucracy gets things in motion. Now, before we think about that being all altruistic, and while it may be because they want to stay in favor, But the people that live in Yakuza-controlled areas in Japan, I found that they are absolutely pro-Yakuza. That doesn't make them criminals, but the Yakuza does good things for them. Go figure, right? So, but the Yakuza is involved in a bunch of crime things, right? Prostitution, all kinds of things. Same things you'd see here, mafia, whatever, right? But one of their big things, like we have casinos here. In Japan, it's pachinko parlors, okay? I don't know if you know what pachinko is, but pachinko is kind of a strange mix between pinball machines and those little mazes and whatnot that you like drop a little ball bearing in and it kind of bounces around. So it's not that it's not a pinball kind of thing where you can make some adjustments, but there's a bunch of luck that goes along with it. And then there's almost like a poker or bingo kind of aspect to it. It's very odd, but extremely popular. They've got these things like everywhere, and like lights and sound, and it's like a casino, right? They can stimulate your senses. They're going to do it. They make a butt ton of money. Okay, so the local Yakuza wanted to tear down Hatsumi Sensei's neighborhood and put in a bunch of pachinko parlors. Okay. And, this didn't sit well, right? Because he's going to lose his house and all that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't worth it, right? So how do you go about saving your neighborhood as a ninja without getting your ass handed to you, without getting killed, without having to look over your shoulder, without having your friends or family, right, his wife, whatever, targeted? Okay? Yeah, if you watch a Western ninja movie, well, we all know what that looks like. Except it's a movie. Okay? Hatsumi Sensei not only went and had a sit-down face-to-face with the top Yakuza family boss, but also saved his house and his neighborhood. No threats, no attacks, no warnings, nothing like that. Okay, so how does a ninja do that? So again, I have this third hand, right? However, I trust my sources, and so apparently, what Hatsumi Sensei did was he scheduled a meeting with this person. And he sat down, and I'm sure that they heard everything that, of course, nobody wants this, but who cares? What are you going to do about it, right? We'll pay you to move. Anyway, Hatsumi Sensei sat down with him, and he didn't threaten him. He didn't do any of this stuff that we would think in the movies. Oh, and he also didn't suit himself and all the master teachers up in black outfits and storm the Yakuza stronghold and kill them all. And no, right? What he did was he said, you're the man, right? Now I'm paraphrasing, right? But you got all the power, right? You can do whatever you want, right? And I'm just this guy, right? I certainly can't stop you, okay? I'm not here to stop you, but I am here to kind of warn you, and don't please honorably, right? This is a warning, not from me. I just need you to know that you know who I am, right? I have a lot of international students, and a large percentage of these students are in law enforcement, intelligence, and other government agencies that I have no control over. And I can't promise that they won't take offense and initiate something that could be very troublesome. But again, I'm sure you have safeguards in place, and you're, You have a lot of things controlled. I have no doubt. Okay. So, but I thought it would be only fair to let you know that they're protective of me. And even if I tell them, take no action, they're gaijin, they're Westerners. I'm concerned that they may, and this could cause many problems. And I don't want to see my neighbors. I don't want to have to deal with an extra heartache. And I'm sure you don't want to have to deal with an extra heartache. But I just want to make you aware that this could be problematic. But again, you can do as you choose. You have the power. He's very gracious, very respectful, left. And the house is still there, the neighborhood is still there, and the pachinko parlors were built somewhere else. Okay? This, my friends, is the epitome of ninjutsu. To understand the strengths and weak points, concerns, pain points, and whatnot of your opponent, present things in a very specific way that leaves the decision making to them so that they don't feel like they were pressurized, they weren't forced, they weren't, right? That the decision to act the way they act was entirely their own. Because I don't know if you recognize this or not, but ninja or no ninja, grandmaster or no grandmaster, there's a shit ton of Yakuza in Japan. Just because you killed a couple here, same thing with mafia and whatnot, doesn't... Look, anybody in law enforcement, the patron saint of law enforcement, of police and folks like that, right, is it St. Jude? I think it's St. Jude. Right? It's the patron saint of lost causes. Because you no sooner clean up one gang and another one moves in to take their fucking place. You no sooner, imprison or cut the head off of the leader of whatever group, and somebody else steps up to take their place. Right? It's the nature of things. Okay? So the ninja understood that there were certain battles that you weren't going to fight that way and win. And even if you won the battle, you were going to so lose the war that nobody's ever going to recognize you and or whatever ever again. Right? So, I mean, when Oba Nobunaga stormed Togakure, the mountain, right, to save face for the loss incurred on him by his son, who lost badly, the order was to kill every man, woman, and child on that mountain and to burn everything to the ground, to leave no trace of the people who embarrassed him. That's a fucked up battle. And he had the armies. I mean, the guy who went on to establish and force peace for 100 years, Tokugawa, right, was one of his generals. So this is not the same, right? This is not the it's not this. This is why I always say it's not a real martial art. What I mean by that is it doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of martial aspects, but it's different to be a foot soldier where your job is to kill or be killed than it is to be a tactician who is focused on maneuvering and outmaneuvering and positioning and placement. And that's very different from a strategist who is looking at the big picture and how to quickly bring the opponent right into submission or to break their will to fight and that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that those things aren't in the other levels as well. But a fighter is a fighter. A tactician may or may not fight. A strategist may or may not fight. But tacticians are less likely to fight long battles, and strategists try to accomplish things with precision and, if possible, without fighting. Because every time you fight, you lose resources. Huh? Fighters, it's what they fucking do. They fight. Huh? They also get into pissing contests with people. They also get into arguments. They also get into it's what they do. Everything is a goddamn competition, right? Or there's a fear that I'll be seen as weak or not good enough or whatever, and I need to shut that shit down. Huh? So, again, this mental and emotional adaptability, this is critical to modern survival, right? I mean, bad enough back in the day, but now we can defend ourselves against a criminal attacker and face jail time. And if we don't face jail time, that jackwagon can turn around and sue me for damages. Welcome to the Western world. I can't speak very clearly about countries other than my own, but here, oh yeah. Right? So, just, so in these other programs, I'm updating some of these things, I'm adding some extra things and whatnot, right? Where we're going to, and I want you to think about this too. I want you to think about some examples, right, of how things that are in the 8 gates, right, and the Juhake can be adapted for 1, self-protection and street defense, right? 2, social interactions and conflict resolution, arguments, pushy salesman, whatever, and business or otherwise leadership success. Okay. Because that's what this is about. It's about not just surviving, it's about thriving, right? Because we're never going to make conflict go away. Right? But we can minimize it. We can learn how to navigate it better, right? We can learn how to turn enemies into allies, right? It's better than walking on eggshells in today's world and worrying about when our friends are going to turn into enemies, right? Because we said the wrong thing or we crossed the wrong line or whatever, right? Because everybody's become so damn hypersensitive, right? So anyway, we'll round this out. Again, I couldn't get all the working pieces together in time for this, which was my original plan. So it should be coming out tomorrow. I'll send the email out where you'll be able to go to a page and download that worksheet that all my students, normally up to this point, only my students have ever gotten it. So as a matter of fact, I know that for sure because I just found that the page that I had set up where people could go and download it, the sign up form wasn't working properly. So nobody got it. So there you go. I can make that claim. So up to this point, only my students have gotten it. And some students, maybe you got it, maybe you set it aside because it was mildly interesting for the moment. But you couldn't wait to get back to class to learn that next physical fighting technique. But put a little bit more stock into it. And if this is something, if you're really wanting to learn ninjutsu, right? There's areas that, I'm sorry, Gyoko-ryu, Koto-ryu, Kukishinden, Tagagi-yoshin, or whatever. Yes, they have philosophy. Yes, they have warrior mindset and those kind of things. But that's from the Bushido side, right? It's not the same. If you're in this to learn ninjutsu, then again, I told everybody at the beginning of the year, I'm leaning into ninjutsu this year, into Ninpo. Does that mean we're not doing the other things? No. The cool thing about the synthesis as Togakure-Ryu has come down through the centuries, right? Originally, the taijutsu in Togakure-Ryu is based on Gyoko Koto. But as it's moved through time, right, it's pulled other things in, right? It's right. Other people join the clan or whatever, right? And so it's the combat system has become more and more robust. And yes, we could say that these other things are samurai, and they are, right? I mean, when I introduce students to those lessons in those lineages, we focus on Bushido. But there's always a kind of an overarching or an underlying sense that, look, here's learn this so that we can then adapt this and do it as a ninja. Okay. Ultimately, it wasn't until Takamatsu Sensei, right, where he got all of these things from 3 different teachers, Toda, Ishitani, and Mizuda, to where we picked up what we have today, right? So this assimilation has just made Togakure much more powerful. But the reason I'm leaning into Togakure is because I just think that from a survival perspective, from a survive and thrive perspective, especially for those of us who know that as we get older and as we build a certain type of life, right, where I'm not going to get into a fight with everybody because I've got more to lose. Okay? There's a greater and greater reason to have these other skills, right? But if that's you, then this is where we're leaning with this stuff, right? So we did Seishin Teki. We did the what did I do the first? I did the combat matrix, right? Ninjutsu combat matrix, which kind of synthesized these things and kind of look at things from a certain strategic perspective. And then we leaned into Seishin Teki. Now we're going to come back and look at the core skill areas, right? For folks that want to dive into that, right? Because this is really where everything that I'm doing, or that I've been doing for a long time, branches out from. Okay. So anyway, I'll get that out to you tomorrow, and you can grab the cheat sheet, on me, that kind of thing. There will be an offer or two for extended training. If you want the extra, great. If not, no harm, no foul. I'm not here to tell you how to train or what you should be doing or whatever. Just doing my duty and passing things on the way it should be. And I understand that I have, there's only a couple of personality types and student types that this is ideal for. Okay? I'm okay with the idly curious or the not sure opting out. I'm way okay with that. Okay. There's also a reason why I approach things the way I do, and why I don't do the, some of you may not know this reference, depending on where you live in the world, the Walmart approach to things, because value looks a certain way. And if I'm in this, who's got the lowest price programs, or the quickest things, or the quickest way to rank, or whatever, strategically, that's a race to the bottom. And I'm looking for quality students, not how many copies of a book can I sell, or look at how many black belts I have, and whatever. Okay. Most of my guys aren't even aiming for rank, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Anyway, let's see. So there was that. So yeah, I'll release all that stuff. Like I said, there's a couple of add-on things that I'm creating that will go with these things. But if you're serious about your training, if you want to develop the mental skills, strategic thinking, and tactical mastery that made the ninja legendary, that made us, that attracted us to this stuff, right? Then this is where the chances start to come in. Okay, so I'll make sure that stuff gets out there. You can click the link, even if all you get is the cheat sheet, the tool with the conversion of not falling into the same trap that everybody else does and just assumes that it that's, we don't do it that way anymore. That's stupid. Why would, right? And without making shit up and understanding the principles and concepts, that there are modern equivalents, that the list would look a certain way today that is not exactly the same as the way it looked back in the day, but the principles and concepts, it's the same. Okay, it is exactly the same. Okay, so anyway, that being said, James, questions, comments, complaints? Thanks for having a green background to your you always have the same green background, don't you? Although your hair looks green. Maybe it's just the way you're seeing. Did you do that on purpose? Did you put an extra green overlay so that you could do the whole St. Patrick's Day thing? No,
I did not.
I still just have a Diet Dr. Pepper. I didn't have green beer or whatever. Anyway, questions, comments, complaints?
The only thing that came in is Jimmy stopped by with the konbanwa.
Konbanwa, okay, desu ka? Okay, no? Okay.
Maui just put amazing Kuden.
Thanks. I hope that the flickering and stuff was not too off-putting. I have no idea what's going on. Could be there could have been something going on around here where there's a slight glitch in the system. I don't know. We had that the other. What was it? When did we just have one of those? I had a coaching call that abruptly ended because we had a power outage? It just flickered, and then the internet just came on and then went off, and then it just stayed off. Like I couldn't even switch over to my cell phone during that one class. So I don't know what's going on in the area, but and looking into it, this is one of those things where like I can't make them do things unless I buy the company, and I'm not in a position to do that. So, and I really don't want to be in the telecommunications field. Although I hear there's lots of money to be made. People would rather binge watch Netflix than come to class. So something to be said for that, right? Anyway, all right. Nothing else?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to lean into this a little bit more. I don't have it all mapped out yet, but we're going to lean into some of these skill sets and whatnot during Whiteboard Wednesday. That, of course, will then springboard into our Friday class as we're taking a look at. Now, of course, we're getting into the physical, and it will be about fighting and whatnot, but we're going to look at these things from this conversion, upgrading, modernizing. Like there's this common content or common term now, modern ninjutsu. But when I look at most people's modern ninjutsu stuff, it's a bunch of stuff thrown together, right? Because that's actually how people have told me. That's actually how they've defined it, right? Well, it's just a bunch of skills just mixed together. I mean, you can make ninjutsu look any way you want. Yeah, but there's only one common thread that makes a ninja a ninja. And it's perspective and mindset. So I know what it looks like, but that doesn't make it, right? There's lots of people that look tough. As soon as stress gets applied, they fold worse than a bad piece of Japanese origami. You guys have seen the origami rock, right? It's usually how they fold. Anyway, so, but what I'm thinking now is in doing like the weapons conversion and looking at that kind of stuff. And then Friday doing the traditional versus the modern kind of approach. So we'll see. But otherwise, I appreciate everybody being on as usual. James, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My shrunken head little friend on the other side. He's the cool thing. Oh, I have to wrap this up. I'm going to say this before I wrap up. James finally got a chance to see how the rest of us have to deal with him and his tall ass lanky self in class. Because when my student came down from upstate New York, James was looking up at his eyes. That did my heart good. You have no idea how that. And the leverage was different. Yes, Jess? Or yes, James? Yeah. Welcome to my world, mother. Sorry. Anyway. All right. That's it, guys. We'll see you next time on KUDEN. Be safe. Train hard. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online